Alright, people, midweek report time. So, plenty of stuff to talk about, and I think it is. Well, I want to do a preview of obviously Boots Ennis and Jesse Bam Rodriguez are fighting this coming weekend. But before we do a quick preview of that, let's start and just. I already did a video about this yesterday, but let's just refresh our minds with this whole Conor Benn situation. Now, Conor Benn claimed yesterday that he's been cleared of any wrong dopings by the National Anti-Doping Panel over his two failed drug tests in 2022. Now, UKAD, basically, if they want to, they can appeal this decision, right? And apparently the National Anti-Doping Panel, I'll see if I can actually find it here, what they actually said. I'm not going to read the full statement. Thought it was there. I don't actually see where it is. I mean, take me innocence, blah, 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 blah. But basically, they said that UKAD's reason was not adequate or worse to that effect. So Conor Benn is now essentially free to compete again, and you would imagine he is now free to compete in the UK again. And as I said in that video, it's now been 2.5 years, roughly a little over 2.5 years. He fought in April 2022 against Chris Van Hayden, I believe it was, in 2022 in April. And that's how long it's been. So it's been over 2.5 years. It's been a long time since he fought in the UK. And to be honest with you, I actually think that that's going to carry on. I do. And the only reason why I say I think it'll carry on is I will be very surprised if his next fight is not with Chris Eubank Jr. I've never seen a fight where two people are two different weight divisions. They're not like, one's at the back end of his career, one is maybe coming into his prime. It depends on what the prime necessarily is. That doesn't mean he's going to be a world champion or anything like that. And for the last 2 years, it's just been Eubank Benn, Eubank Benn, Eubank Benn. No matter what happens in their respective careers, whether Eubank fights this guy or Conor Benn is suspended and he's fighting Mary, it's always Eubank Benn, Eubank Benn, Eubank Benn. In one sense, you kind of want to, if they can do it, just do it just to stop it, if you know what I mean, because it just seems like both these guys could be in their 60s and they'd still probably be trying to do it if they never did it for some reason. I know originally when they were meant to fight in 2022, going into that fight, there was a lot of people who were intrigued about that fight. And at that time, I did get intrigued about it, I'm not going to lie. There was a lot of people intrigued about that fight, and it would have done good numbers had it gone ahead. Doesn't want me hearing it was shaping up to do some pretty good numbers had it gone ahead. Now, that was at a time before the Saudis got involved in boxing. That was at a time when there wasn't really many pay-per-views at all. I mean, we were meant to get that on the Zone pay-per-view in the UK. 2 months later, we got Derek Chisora versus Tyson Fury 3 on pay-per-view. So, they were cutting it in with pay-per-views, and the shows themselves were not spectacular. Then Turki Alalshikh came in, and shook everything up. I mean, he really did. As Muhammad Ali would say, he shook up the world. He shook up the world of boxing, certainly. And now we're seeing these, main events, which are pay-per-view level main events, with pay-per-view quality undercards. I know some people want to complain and say, but Turbiev Bivol wasn't that good, and this, that, and the other, and the Fury versus Usyk undercard is not that good. In comparison to like the Day of Reckoning, shows like that, yeah, and the match from Queensbury 5v5, I agree with you, it's not as good as those cards. But you're telling me that Fury versus Usyk 2, the undercard is on par with Fury Chisora 3, that it's on par with Joshua Klitschko, because they were not strong undercards. I mean, most people don't even remember who fought on those undercards. They might remember Dubois fighting Kevin Lorena because Dubois was dropped 3 times in the first round, but only because of that big moment, the drama. If it had been the other way around and Dubois just breezed them, many people probably be like, oh yeah, did he fight on? No, he did fight on that show. That kind of attitude where you have to be, your memory is like, oh yeah, forgot who was on that undercard actually. So Turki Alalshikh's doing great shows. I suspect he's going to look to do that as an undercard fight or potentially a co-main event to the February 22nd show, which we are hearing a little bit more about. Before I touch on that, I'll talk more a little bit briefly more about Conor Benn. So the situation is with UKAD, they can appeal this decision. We haven't heard anything from the British Boxing Board of Control as of yet. Conor Benn several times throughout the course of this has maintained his innocence and has said things like he's been cleared. I remember when the WBC cleared him, you had so many people online saying, well, that's it, case closed. And it was just laughable. You were like, well, one, the WBC can't clear you. They can't, the WBC can ban, the only thing they can do is they can issue a ban from you from their rankings. But that doesn't mean you're banned from the sport of boxing. Povetkin fought 2 times when he was banned for a year by the WBC in 2017, and he fought, and both those fights were sanctioned by WBA and WBO respectively. So they can issue a ban, but it's not a, you can't fight. It's just banning you from the rankings. So I always looked at that and was like, well, that's a bit laughable. And the reason they gave was not the reason that Benn was given as to why clomiphene was in his system. So again, it just makes the whole thing look not good for the WBC, quite frankly. But also with UKAD, this whole situation, again, like the Tyson Fury situation, and that was a bit more of a slam dunk, that we knew Fury, certainly with the second, with the issues he was having with the how you doing. But they didn't cover themselves in glory with the Fury situation either. I mean, that dragged out for nearly 3 years. Remember that? It was 2 years really, but actually no, in a way it was 3, because you're going back to February of 2015 and it was June 2018 again he was fighting again. Obviously the incident happened in the Christian Hammer fight. Going into that was 2015, it was early 2015, February time. He fought Klitschko, and then he didn't fight until he fought Sefer Safiri in June 2018. That's a long ass time to have these investigations. It made UKAD look terrible in my opinion. And I think although this is a bit of a different situation in a sense of Benn's been digging his heels and not being the most forthcoming, it's still, given the fact that National Anti-Doping Panel are not accepting what UKAD are come back with, it doesn't paint them in a good light. And as I said in the previous video, was Benn maybe on a silent ban the last couple of months? I don't know. Information I'm not privy to whether he was or not. But I think now, given the fact it's been 2 years, and again, I've got no great love for Conor Benn, but given the fact it's been 2 years now, I would say that this is something that we need to just stick a fork in. I think that the amount of time he has lost out of the ring over the last 2 years is probably sufficient enough that you could say, right, he's been out of the ring and he's not been able to fight in the UK, and the fights he has have been pretty obscure. So, alright, let's just stick a fork in this, draw a line in the sand and move on. Should he fail again, then I think we need to have talks about the book being thrown. As I've said that several times, if it's a multiple thing, if you've maybe Ryan Garcia is another example, if he comes back next April and then in a year's time fails again, well, a year's not long enough in my opinion after that. So that's the situation there. I would expect Conor Benn, if he's not fighting Chris Eubank Jr. on February 22nd, to feature on that card in a prominent fight nonetheless. Joseph Parker is one of the fighters on the list in contention to fight Daniel Dubois for his IBF world title fight on the February 22nd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Frank Warren has confirmed. So pretty much it's a done deal that Daniel Dubois is going to be fighting on that show. Whether it be headline or not remains to be seen. I suspect he probably will. A big heavyweight world champion, defended his title, main event, just makes sense. Joseph Parker is one of the names. Now, Frank Warren, in a previous interview he gave with Box Nation, I believe it was, dismissed the possibility of it being Fabio Wadley. So we can rule him out. We can rule him out. And I get it from a business point of view. He wants to let that fight simmer and make money off Wadley at the same time. I would imagine that the maybe 2 to 3 names in contention would be probably Bacoli, potentially, because you might just look at that fight stylistically, think yeah, it could be a good entertaining fight, let's just do that. If Daniel Dubois wins, they might just it's not a mandatory defense, but they'll get someone else for Adjik Kabayel to face as an eliminator, and stuff like that. So they might do that, or they might just do Zhilei Zhang, which I think Parker and Zhang are the 2 most likely opponents. I'd be very surprised if anyone else's name is in the hat. Maybe Otto Wallin. Maybe, but if you're doing it on a Riyadh show, Otto Wallin against Anthony Joshua in 2023, when Joshua was on the comeback, and we kind of were thinking, okay, he's looking, how is he looking? Could this be a banana skin? That made sense, and that made sense to do it. Dubois against Wallin, world heavyweight title, I would make Dubois a heavy favourite. And I just don't think that's a main event, or it might be an undercard fight. Yeah, you could get away with doing it on the undercard, certainly. But if you're going to be main event, which I think it's likely Dubois will be, you're not going to get away with that as the main event. And therefore, it becomes Zhang and Parker. I think they're the 2 names, both under the Queensberry banner. Zhang, to me, is the more dangerous fight, in a sense of Zhang is one of the best punchers, if not the best, in the heavyweight division. And he can punch with both hands, don't forget that. So I think that fight is extremely dangerous for Dubois. However, Zhang has the worst stamina of any fighter in the heavyweight division, any top fighter anyway. So you get through a couple of rounds, you're pretty much on the pig's back, you're good to go. So him against Zhang makes sense, and as well as that, he is a Queensberry fighter. He is not getting any younger. If he's not 41, he's close to it. So his best days are not ahead of him. It's not like Frank Warren is going to be able to make that much money, you know, having Zhilei Zhang fight whoever on a random Queensberry show, or have him on an undercard fight. So why not just put him in with Dubois, take a risk? If he loses, well, sail off into the sunset, maybe have one more fight, do a big show in China or something like that, maybe. But at the end of the day, you've not got much miles left in Zhilei Zhang, so why not do him? I can see why you'd rather do a Zhilei Zhang than maybe do a Fabio Wadley. If you want to get miles out of him, you want to get his name more out there, and then do Dubois versus Wadley for a big bonanza rather than a good show, but make it a massive show. I get that. So Parker, one of the names in contention. At the same time, Parker's earned a title shot. He really has. If he has to vacate that WBO title, or maybe are they going to wait and see what happens with Fury Usyk, because it could end up becoming a unification. That's a possibility. Then, you know, I think that's a good fight in of itself. I think stylistically Parker will do better against Dubois than Joshua did. I think he'll last longer, but I think he'll ultimately end up getting taken out. I genuinely do. Eddie Hearn has stated that there will be co-promotional shows with Frank Warren's separate, interestingly enough, to Riyadh season events. Now they have both signed a broadcast deal with DAZN. He added their shows will no longer clash with each other. You know, that's one of my biggest pet peeves when promoters do that, when they clash shows. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year, or maybe it was 2022. I think it might have been Adam Azim versus Ryland Charlton. Don't quote me on that, but I know there was an actual day where I think Boxer, Sky, and it might have been Michael Conlon versus that guy. I can't think of his name now. Jordan Gill. It might have been that, or it might have been a different fight for Conlon. But I know there was a day where there was like a Queensberry show, there was a Boxer show, and there was a Matchroom show, and they were all happening on the same day. I think Boxer had to do theirs earlier. And I was just thinking, why? Like, what? Why? Now, I know maybe with venues and stuff like that, you might not be able to get a particular venue on a particular day. I get that. But it does, to me, take away. Like, you know, you want to grow the sport. Well, you're not going to grow it by having to make fans, you know, pick and choose. You know, oh, well, I have to watch this, or I have to go back, or I'm going on to this, or I'm going on to that. You know, I think Lee Wood, one of his fights with Mauricio Lara, I think that clashed with, I think second fight with Mauricio Lara. I can't quite remember what that clashed with, but it clashed, I think, with one of Frank Warren's fights, and it was just like, why? Why? You know, and you don't really want that. You want to be able to just, you know, right, I'm going to watch this fight, blah, blah, blah. So if that means we get less of that, that's a good thing. Eddie Hearn was doing, I think it was Instagram, a Q&A, where he talked about having a show in London in January, which I'll keep my ear to the street for that one, potentially bringing back Prize Fighter. And Eddie Hearn hasn't done a Prize Fighter show. 2015, I think, was the last time he did a Prize Fighter show. Ben Shalom started, that's what Ben Shalom actually broke into boxing doing, was he called them Ultimate Boxer, I think is what he called them. They were essentially Prize Fighter renamed. Now, he hasn't done one of them himself for a couple of years, but those Prize Fighter shows, they were entertaining, but there were times where you just knew the winner before it happened. I remember Mike Perez took part in one, and Mike Perez, decent fighter, very good fighter. Mike Perez, very well schooled amateur, could punch a little bit, good fighter Mike Perez. And I remember he did one, I think it was 2012, 2013, and I think you go quarterfinal, semi-final, final. If you win, you get something like 30-40 grand for an easy night's work. So, and that would happen occasionally, where it was like, right, you just see one and you're like, he's definitely going to win. That can happen, but it's a good way. I mean, like, you think of it like this: where is someone with limited ability going to make 40 grand, 30 grand in a night? I mean, you ask me. I mean, that could be the difference between them actually boxing full time for a year, or having to go back and do a day job. So, you know, the Boxer / Prize Fighter shows are normally pretty good, to be fair. You see some good scrap at the highest level, but you see some good scraps. But he was talking about doing 16 shows next year, was Eddie Hearn. So, man, let's see. I mean, and the UK shows, because yeah, Yeah, he definitely needs to do more to UK shows, 110%. Turki Alalshikh tweeted yesterday saying, "Today marks a new era for Ring Magazine, stay tuned." Now, Ring Magazine, I believe that was, or still is, I don't know what the situation necessarily is, was ran, I think, by Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy, or certainly just maybe Oscar De La Hoya. I can't remember the ins and outs of it. So has Turkey now taken over Ring Magazine? Is Turkey really is taking over boxing? I mean, quite literally, you know, if that is Ring Magazine, if the Zone are going to be shown, like all like Riyadh season and Frank Warren is going to be on the Zone, you may potentially see Ben Shalom, etc. My guy really is looking to take over the sport, man. He is going to be the absolute, he's going to be the kingpin. Seriously, never actually had a copy of Ring Magazine, funny enough. I always just get I'm of that. And I really should, because I am someone who does, you know, a good magazine, like I say, a boxing magazine. I say one like Ring, which goes back to the 1920s, will be amazing. But I'm always someone who just, as you see, I go get X and boxing scene and stuff like that. Eddie Hearn has said as well he wants to do a 5v5 for Oscar De La Hoya, Golden Boy, versus Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. And 5v5s between promoters are going to be more frequent. I thought the 5v5 Queensberry versus Matchroom was a success in terms of, you know, the event. It certainly wasn't a success for Matchroom. Absolute trumping. 5v5 De La Hoya versus Hearn, Golden Boy versus Matchroom. That could be interesting. And the fights he said there, Jack Catterall, Jose Ramirez, favour Catterall. Opataya versus Zurdo Ramirez, favour Opataya. Majamov versus Ortiz, my favour Ortiz slightly in that one. Shakur versus Zepeda, William Zepeda. Shakur, brilliant boxer, but how do you? I'd favour Shakur. I'd favour Shakur to win that fight. Bouts Ennis, who we'll talk about now in a minute, versus Ryan Garcia. I would favour Bouts Ennis. He would be way too big for Ryan Garcia. Way too big. Way too big. Way too athletic as well. He's a freak of nature. Speaking of Bouts Ennis, he's fighting this weekend on a really good show over in Pennsylvania. But, and there is a but, we're not going to use it, we're just going to call him Karen. That's his name, right? We're just going to call him Karen. I remember watching that Bouts Ennis fight that him and Karen had a couple of years ago, and it was awful. It was a real negative performance from Karen. He did land a good few right hands on Bouts Ennis, which was a bit of a worry. Now, there was nothing really on them, but I was like, you want to be a bit tighter with your defense. That's kind of when I really noticed that Bouts Ennis was a bit lax in the defense department, because he kept getting hit with right hands in that fight. And again, they weren't damaging shots necessarily, but you know, you still want to see a fighter just have that defense, just have that the wherewithal to just know, right? Even if he's negative, and he was so negative in that, it was a horrible fight. Even if he's negative when he is throwing, just be wary of what's coming. It might not be much, but just, you know, just keep an eye on it. He can do that. And Bouts Ennis' defense, again, it's not his strongest point, and I'm hoping he tightens it up. I love Bouts Ennis. I love watching him. I think he's talented, but I just don't. The first fight was a stinker. I hope it's not a stinker this time. I really do. Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who I really enjoy watching as well, is on the undercard against Pedro Gorava. I think I say that guy's name, defending his WBC 115-pound world title. Jesse Bam Rodriguez, Eddie Hearn has him in his top 5 pound for pound. I don't do pound for pound myself personally, but he is one of the most. Eddie Hearn really got a good. He's got a good one there. He's got a star for the future in Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Amo Williams, this his first fight since the loss to Hamza Shiraz. I think it is. It is. He's in there with a guy 11-1, Gan Garriardo. I'm assuming he is. I was going to say Italian. That sounded Italian, that last name. No, from Flushing in Queens. Who did he lose to? He lost to a guy who was 13-5. Okay, that's going to be a comeback fight for Amo Williams. Ray Ford is on there as well. Is this his first fight since the Nick Ball loss? It is, and he's in there with Orlando Gonzalez. Does it say what weight this is going to be at? Just curious to see what weight it's at. It says super feather, so he's moving up in weight. So Ray Ford back out as well. It's a pretty good card, to be fair. It's a pretty good card, to be fair. The only thing I will say is the main event. I'm just worried that could end up becoming a bit of a stinker. Now, people, The president is back, and I'm not talking about Donald Trump. Ike Ibeabuchi is set to return to professional boxing at the ripe old age of 51 years old. After 25 years, someone's whole life, he's been out of the ring. 25 years out of the ring, he will face Ike Ibeabuchi on December 7th in Nigeria. Ibeabuchi was 20-0 in 1999, on course for a world title shot. Yes, he was. He ended up getting sent to 2 to 10 years in prison for battery with intent to commit a crime, and 3 to 20 years for attempted SA. After being deemed incompetent to stand trial due to bipolar, he is now free to fight again. It's not the first time he's been out of prison. He was out of prison, I think, in 2016. You may remember at the time, Bob Arum, who had worked with Ibeabuchi in the 90s, was talking about potentially him fighting none other than Andy Ruiz. Yes, you may remember. I think it was April of 2016. Then he violated his parole, ended up back inside, and now he's looking to return to the ring. You know, Ibeabuchi, if you looked at highlights of him, and I wasn't watching boxing in the 1990s, obviously I was only a little boy, so I didn't even know what boxing was till I was about 8. I think it was 2002, thereabout. I think it was when Tyson fought Lewis. So that was what, 02. That's the first time I really started kind of knowing about the sport of boxing. I knew nothing. I was only a little boy. But if you look at Ibeabuchi, look at the highlights. Has power, talent, strong, big punch output, good stamina. He looked like a good, promising figure. In that, if I'd have been the age I am now in the 1990s, I would have been looking at him and saying, yeah, a lot of potential there. And you got to remember, he was doing that in the 1990s, so he would have been in his mid-20s. He would have gone into the back end of the Lennox Lewis era, so he would have been with the likes of, an aged Holyfield and aged Tyson. I think he would have probably beaten both of them. Lewis, don't know about that. It would be an interesting fight though, definitely would be, because he had a similar style to Holyfield, and an old Holyfield gave a prime Lennox Lewis, certainly in the second fight, fits. Now, he didn't win the second fight. I thought Lewis did legit win it, but a lot closer than the first fight. Much closer. And Holyfield was a tremendous talent though, to be fair. But then you look at the guys that came after Lewis, it's really Klitschko's. Corey Sanders would have been an interesting fight, to be fair. And Ibeabuchi had talent, he definitely did, but he had a lot of issues, to say the least. I had heard rumours about some of the stuff that he was maybe partaking in the 1990s, and yikes. 51 years old. He's that's a lost heavyweight champion right there, and now at 51 years old. No, I just don't think that's a good idea. That's just me personally. I just don't think that's a good idea. But let's wait and see. Frank Warren has stated that Hamza Sheeraz will return on the Riyadh season show in February and will be fighting for a world title. He doesn't specify the champion. It could be Yanibek Alim Kaluli. It could be Carlos Adames. I would say it would probably be Adames. That's a more winnable fight in my opinion than Alim Kaluli at this point for Hamza Sheeraz. But world title fight in February, there you go. I mean, he's been active since February. He's been quite active. And Hamza Sheeraz, I've said it once, I'll say it again, tremendous talent. Absolute tremendous talent. It really truly is. It really truly is. Or he really truly is. Is there anything else there? Eddie Hearn, when asked about the Bivol rematch next, it's the only fight for both we have accepted. That would, because I remember, was it Turkey or was it Bob Arum who was saying there might be an interim fight? Well, Eddie Hearn is saying there won't be, that they've accepted it, which is a good thing. We want to go straight in. I want to, if they left Beterbiev Bivol till next October, I go Bivol happily, and I go for him more confidently as well, because he's going to be pushing nearly 41 Beterbiev. No, I think he's got a finite window to be at his best in this rematch, and it's probably in the next 6 to 8 months, realistically. But anyway, I will leave it there, people. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button. I've got a lot of work ahead of me this evening. I've got a lot of stuff I want to do for the channel and get some content out for the coming weekend. Not that I'll be going anywhere, but I just want to keep active. Keep that growth going. I want to get 21k as quick as I can. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you did. Hit subscribe, of course, as always. Till next time.